Shades and Shapes in the Dark by Michael Kilman. Read by the author. Chapter 1. The Crossroads of Life and Death. Those shades and shapes in the dark, for which we draw our desires, shape our way of knowing of where best to put your ire. We cannot see the murky mists with eyes shut ever so tight, where we leave behind only corpses and journey into endless night. Oh, how we take and take some more, for thieving is our business. We are a shadow of what we once were when we know only stiffness. Wherever you go is where you are, no matter how fast you're running. No magic nor wisdom can set you free from your mind's endless cunning. Come, let us wander through trains of thought, and let the forms take their shape. For having read this far already, know now, reader, there is no escape. Tonight, she would stand before Demon for the last time. It was the last time because now, tonight, as the cold crept in under her skin on the darkest night of the year, and as the snow pelted her face with its cold, harsh kisses, she would end it. She was tired of running, of hiding, of the manipulations and games the living shadow had visited upon her these long years. Her torment would end before the sun rose over the snowy meadow. Clarissa had not come here for suicide, far from it. She was no conciliatory party accepting defeat and suing for peace. There could be no peace between them. It was time to surrender to her fate, here, tonight, no matter what her fortune. She would finish the ritual, the true ritual. She didn't know if Demon could die, or if she could trap it forever like some bug in amber. Perhaps her plan would fail. 40 years of research, of questing for freedom from its gaze, left her with no definitive answers. But she had learned much and more. She stood there waiting for it because, as they say, fortune favors the bold, and her boldness was the sharpest of edges. It had taken everything from her. Through the years, it had stripped away all pretense of happiness so that only unease remained. Only a species of longing stretched out through her loneliness as if a single gossamer thread balancing all her life were holding her up. She was dangling, so what use was anything but surrender? She stood in the eerie meadow, with trees bowing out away from the center as if fleeing in fear. Any who came to this place understood that need to run from the heart of the creature's den before it woke, even before they recognized the evil that lay within. The color was dimmer, desaturated, sometimes only shades of black and white. The sounds could hold no echo, and the snow and overcast enforced stillness. This was where it all began 40 years ago, when she was just a little girl. A cursed place, a place that marked its boundaries by the bones of dozens of creatures, some human. This was Demon's lair, but it was only the entrance. Years before, when she had needed to find power and answers, she had traveled to its depths, a space beyond reason or sense. She had fought her way out of that terrifying liminal space that lacked stability of form, full of terrors and wonders. The wait was almost over. The invisible but familiar shroud descended around her. It darkened her vision and constricted her movement, a prophecy of Demon's arrival. Clarissa closed her eyes and took a deep breath, centering herself as she had learned to do from both Samira and Kathy. The constraints of the shroud slackened. She could not stop it from descending, but no longer would it hold her captive as it did in her youth. Though Demon had only ever spoken to her a handful of times, Clarissa thought it would speak tonight. She had no reason to be certain of such a thing, but this was the end. It didn't matter that the fear nipped at any exposed skin the way that cold pulled at her edges, nor did it matter if she wasn't strong enough to defeat Demon. Her choice was born of revelation, for ultimately all must stand at the crossroads of life and death. She would stand and be true. It was only because of the snow catching the light of the full moon peeking through the clouds that she could see the tendrils of form slipping through bare branches and trunks of trees, leaking into the meadow like some sinister mist. There was no sound, save for the soft flutter of snowflakes as they gathered on the tall grass, sliding down to touch the earth and gather together. She wished she could gather like that with others. What a grand thing it would be to build something, some life with other people who loved her, with a purpose beyond survival. But Demon had made certain of her isolation. It did not want her dead. At least, she didn't think so. Its purpose was like a plague that left scarred survivors. Demon was a parasite. It was her fear, anger, and sorrow on which it fed, for it always appeared when she was deep in possession by potent emotions, or it cultivated those same feelings so that it could reap a bountiful harvest. She called it Demon, but she didn't believe in deities. Some might argue that the existence of such evil would demand a deity, but why should it? No. For Clarissa, gods and devils were just lazy stories that people told themselves to feel better about their lives. It would be so easy to hope that some god or goddess would come to aid her, to defend her, to send some sign to press forward. But in 40 years of torment, she had seen nothing to suggest divine intervention. There would be no deus ex machina. Here she was, now, standing in the frozen meadow, forced into a confrontation with some supernatural being. She couldn't deny magic. She had command of some herself. But magic didn't mean there were gods or devils, or heavens or hells. At first, she had called it a shadow monster, but that wasn't right. Shadows couldn't kill. Light disrupt shadows. Demon disliked the light, but once it had shown itself in the height of the noonday sun. It was a moment never long from her memory. She had lost 2 things that day, her greatest passion and a great love. The wind picked up. It did not howl, but it shook the snow from the tops of the surrounding trees and cast flakes into the air like confetti shimmering in the moonlight. It would be beautiful if it didn't mark the coming of a monster. The wind was Demon's herald, its laughter. The mist coalesced just inside the boundary of bones as a form took shape. She heard the crunching of feet in snow and frozen grass. She lifted her flashlight and shone it at the spot. Demon raised its arm to shield its eyes, taking a step back, shifting its form, and then finding a temporary solidity. But there was no hiss or burning or wince of pain, though she had bought the brightest flashlight available. After a moment, it let its long, jagged arms relax by its side. Spikes protruded every few inches, starting small at its wrist and then growing in size until they stood 6 inches tall on its shoulders. They reminded her of rotting teeth made of something like solidified tar. Its eyes were like giant black orbs, deep as darkness and inhabited with a glowing red coal in the center of each. To stare into them was to feel a sucking sensation on your spirit. Clarissa knew from long experience that to stare into them was to risk everything. She stared at them now, fixing her will on Demon as it had so many times fixated its will on her. It chuckled. She had never heard it chuckle before. It was more solid than she had ever seen it. Demon's black skin tightened around every sharp angle. She could see and count its 16 ribs. Its torso was long, but its legs were longer. Its face was that of an upside-down triangle, with rounded edges and long twisting horns at the top. It felt like a demon, and so she called it demon. She wondered if its shape mirrored her thoughts of it. As if it had plucked the thought from her mind, it said in a low, rumbling voice, "Yes, something like that." Its voice harmonized as if several were speaking in union, deep and guttural, but still clear and crisp. "So you will speak, demon?" "Yes, you have come to the end now, and so we will speak of our contract." The growl was more like a purr, an animal vibrating its voice as it vocalized its intentions. "You tricked me. I was a little girl. That contract was an accident." It smiled, showing 2 sharp fangs among perfect white teeth. It was a vampire, but not a vampire. "We all make contracts we don't intend. Sometimes we are born into them. Do you really think it was an accident?" "You tricked me." "Does it matter? You still gave me your blood." "I didn't know what I was doing. Clarissa stopped and stood up a little straighter. She would not plead or grovel. She wasn't here to beg. She was here to destroy it once and for all, or die trying. "I like when you call me demon. You are right. It is not what I am, but it suits me well enough." She wondered if she would get any answers, or perhaps she would only find the end of her life. But she must try, and the next question flowed naturally from her lips. "What are you, really?" It said nothing, nor did it move to step closer. Her flashlight still on it, she could see the writhing motion of its form. The red coals pulsed. For all its sharpness, there was no permanence in this form. It shifted depending on need, like all true power. Only its desire held it together, but soon it would drift apart like a dissipating mist. "What are you?" Clarissa asked again. "You should already know." She didn't. She did have a suspicion, but far more doubt. Something itched in the back of her mind, some revelation waiting to emerge, but will it as she might, it would not come. "No, I don't." It smiled. "Then you have already lost. You should not have come here if you didn't understand my nature." "Haven't you had enough games?" It chuckled with a low rumble, and she thought for a moment that it had tilted its head back with the laughter, but now it was impossible to tell. Gone was the form that reminded her so much of a demon. In its place, it warped and bent, as if taking parts of reality with itself. It squirmed, as if there was nothing but a writhing black sackcloth full of pulsing insects beneath its dark outer layer. "I never tire of games. It is what I live for, live on. It is half of my being." "Then what is the other half?" Reforming its face, white teeth flashed below the red dots of its eyes. "So this is to be it, Clarissa, the night when the contract ends. Are you sure you're ready for the final confrontation? You can turn now, and we can continue our game as it was. But 2 more will die." "So there is a chance to save them?" A spark of hope betrayed the fear in her voice. It said nothing, teeth and eyes gleaming. She shivered, and she wasn't sure if it was from the cold or from the fear of what must come next. Clarissa said, "No, this is it. This will end tonight." The teeth flashed again in the middle of the billowing mist. "Quite a shame. Rare is the victim that I can feed on for 4 decades. I cannot, however, refuse a direct challenge. It is the core of the contract. Did you change my memory? Block me from seeing the terms of the contract somehow? Of course. But humans always eventually push through to see the small print. It smiled. She stood a little straighter. Then I challenge you. Are you certain? For if you go through with this, after tonight only one of us will remain standing, and if it is not me, and it will be me, I will take your life, and I will wring you dry of all your being until there is nothing left but a husk, just like the others. Yes, I'm certain. And you would proceed knowing the stakes? I am not afraid to die. This time there was unmistakable laughter. It boomed on the wind, but there was no echo. Now, why would I kill you? But you said... She couldn't finish. She thought she knew what demon meant, but the prospect of it was worse than anything she had imagined. If you lose, I will wear your skin for the rest of your life so that I can feed constantly. You will break loose the boundaries of my container and set me free for an age. You will be helpless to stop me. You will see the horrors of what happens when you give in to every craving. Just imagine the perversion, the vile acts, the unrelenting uses of your body and mind that I could enjoy for a century or maybe more. I can use my ancient knowledge to keep you going until your bones turn to dust. Why? Why would you do that to me? Why are you doing any of this? Demon only flashed its teeth. She took a deep breath and felt the defiance rise in her. Yes, she was afraid. Yes, she was tired, but her will was strong. Even if it would solidify her suffering, she had to try. 2 lives depended on it. 2 of the most important people left in her life, and there were no others still standing. She swallowed hard, choking down her fear and anger, and said, I know your secret. I know how to defeat you. Do you now? The red embers pulsed. You seem so certain. Tell me, how did you come by this knowledge? We both know all those years of traveling and study yielded no true answers. She was afraid she was wrong. But a part of her was certain, the same part of her that had helped her press even through the darkest days of her fugues. Nothing lasts forever, demon. That is true, but our kind can spend many human generations. And for how many generations have you been tormenting people? Since humans first began dreaming. Clarissa gathered her will and courage and said, The answer was there all along, right from the moment I first encountered you. The white teeth reflected the light of her flashlight as it said, I have no such weakness. She said it again and felt the strength in the words. Nothing lasts forever, demon. Demon chuckled. Tell me, how did you discover this apparent weakness? She swallowed hard. That's a long story. You traveled all this way in arrogance? You don't believe me? That I have the tools to end you? I don't. There is one way to nullify the contract, but no human has ever uncovered it, and it will not mean my end. I am eternal. Nothing lasts forever, demon, she said, a third time, sharpening the words. Perhaps, but I will far outlive your kind. I have no weakness that you could exploit. Then let me tell you how I discovered it. Why waste both of our time? It seems to me that you only wish to delay the inevitable. Why fight at all? Simply lay down, surrender, and let me inhabit you and be done with it. A fire burned in Clarissa's breast as she felt the courage grow. She would finish the ritual and fulfill her promise to Monica and Annie. Because, demon, I want you to see your end coming. I want you to learn how weak and pathetic you are. It laughed for several moments. Something happened then, something Demon didn't notice. For as it laughed, echoes returned to the meadow for the first time in human memory. Clarissa did notice, and it brought her courage. "Very well," said Demon. "Consider it a last request before I inhabit you and make a mockery of your species." Clarissa could see it was excited to feed on the emotions that would rise from her story. It already knew the darkest parts. Reliving it all wouldn't be easy, but it had to be done. After all, this was her last stand, her one chance to end ancient evil.